Now, let me start with the minister. Now, all of this talk really about the Eurobond, we have gone to the market and we got $1 billion. We actually initially were hoping to do $1.5 billion. We got $1 billion, and the interest rate is almost 11%. Almost 11%. There are examples being shown of Kenya, which got theirs for 6%, interest rate of 6%, Cote d'Ivoire about 6%, and Ghana, we are doing almost 11%.
Yeah, Samson, Eurobond, a compelling engagement by government, because we do have a domestic debt which is maturing that we are obliged to pay, and given that we have an exhaustive tax threshold, you are unable to inflict more hurt onto the private sector, to businesses, and to income earners through taxation. So the other plausible option is to borrow. Now, government initially wanted to borrow $1.5 billion US. We thankfully have been able to do $1 billion US, which should help in managing the appreciation of the cedi against the dollar in terms of an improved supply, because it's denominated in a foreign currency. And this is the first time a sub-Saharan African country has done it, for the 4th time apart from South Africa. Now, it means that in 2028, we should be paying about $333 million US, and 2029 about 400, in order to be able to retire this. Now, when I say maturing domestic debt, it's important that I add that in 2007, we went for the first time for the bond issue. Part of this money will be used to retire what is due from that particular bond. And in order that it will create space for us to meet some other objectives within the budget, there are real challenges to the economy, no doubt about it, particularly the dwindling fall in prices of crude, and our annual budget funding amount, the ABFA, under the Petroleum Act, have been significantly compromised and undermined, because the anticipated inflows into that kitty is not forthcoming, with oil selling at below or around $40 US, when we anticipated $92 or $96 US per barrel for purposes of computation. So there were allocations within the budget which were dedicated to funding from the ABFA. Some of this, like I said, is to deal with it. I couldn't agree more with you that Kenya did it for 6.6%, as I got the statistics from Onawukwati, and then you have Ivory Coast at 6.85%. I recall that in 2007, when the MPP went first for the bond market, I was part of the people who was very critical of them, even when they came with 7.5% then. So I can 8.5% at the time. I was part of the team which was very critical of them and argued that they could have gotten a better deal. But you should appreciate that global developments, particularly developments in China, affected the bond market and our ability to be able to rake in at a better interest regime. I've heard many economists argue that we probably could have done it much more earlier, but even that would not have been helpful. What is important is what our colleague argued earlier: better management of the economy, better prioritization of the national resources, including borrowed resources, beyond the retirement of the debt. We should appreciate in which other areas will be the allocation of this $1 billion in order that it can get the economy on the track. So let me just conclude my bit by responding to a key point which was mentioned by our colleague regarding productivity. There's no scientific measure of productivity in our country, and it's very worrying for me. I go to minimum wage negotiation, you just attribute 60-70% to labor as our contribution to GDP. We are trying to develop the labor market information, but a very significant point I like to make: government has implemented the single spine pay policy at a social and economic cost. It has contributed immensely to the wage overrun, which does not allow for the freeing of other resources beyond compensation to support other budget issues, including interest payment and others. So I thank you for the day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Haruna Idrisu.
Before I even make
well, he wants to. Okay.
Now, before I even make any, let me just jump in.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Look, before I even make any contribution, a couple of things have to be corrected. in the second and third Eurobond projects, we're told that they were going to be used to retire the old bonds. It is becoming a propaganda line that when government is going to take this kind of unhelpful facility, then it's as though to bring in some political equalization. Let's tie in the 2007 Eurobond so that it doesn't look like we are too bad. Please, the minister came to Parliament and told us why you are going for this facility. That's the first impression that has to be corrected.
Now, what reason did he give, apart from
I'll come to that. I'll come to that. We are borrowing to consume. The second point is that they say, oh, the market is unfavorable, and he just made a point, and it is true. The figures I gave, Kenya this year, 1.5 billion, 6.875%. Kenya, Cote d'Ivoire, 6.62% this year. So Poland, and perhaps they are a bit higher than us, 0.94.
And Cote d'Ivoire too had gone for just 1 billion.
Yeah, they went for just 1 billion. So this point coming from the finance ministry and from the minister that, oh, it's the market. It's not the market. It is the shape of our economy right now. People are telling us that, look, the way you either I will not even lend to you, or that if I'm going to lend to you, you have to pay a lot of money for it. Now I come to the reason why we wanted a bond and why this Eurobond, the way it's turned out, is a wake-up call to all of us as Ghanaians. You see, when the minister came, he said, we have taken domestic, we have floated domestic instruments, say treasury bills, and we have borrowed from people in Ghana. And those ones, they are short-term, 3 months, 6 months. They are due for payment. What did we use the money for? That borrowing, we borrowed to consume. We did not borrow to go and do some road projects or to invest in some project that will pay itself. We borrowed to consume. But now we cannot have money to pay back, and the time is due. So Parliament, give us approval to go for a proper loan, to come and finance those short-term instruments that are due. And then when they went to the market, the investor said, you people, given the shape of your economy, we won't lend to you. Some say they won't lend to us. And those who said they will lend to us said they will lend to us at 10.75%. Ghana and Zambia, we are now at the bottom.
The whole of Africa, about something that was oversubscribed, and you are saying some say they won't lend to us.
Look, the oversubscription. Viewers should pardon me. Yes, oversubscription. Viewers should pardon me. If you're a lady, listen to me.
Don't use lady. You lose
I'm saying that if you are a lady and you say that, look, for 1 Ghana cedi, I'm available to you guys.
Oh, what an example.
The queue that will form at her door, because of course 1 Ghana cedi, it's good. And she can always point to the long queue and say, look, I'm so attractive to men. That is what Ghana has done.
No, but the question was subscription. I thought it's been a permanent feature of all the...
Absolutely. Look, if Ghana, you're right, if Ghana had said, look...
Just withdraw your bad example. Your example is
that is the example. I'm sure viewers understand what I mean.
Withdraw your bad example.
If Ghana had gone to the market and insisted that Cote d'Ivoire got 6.625, if you will not give us 7.5, we will not borrow. Government would have come back with nothing. But you said, well, I know that my economy is in bad shape. I'm going to give you 10.75. And people say, hey, really? If I go and buy bonds of Poland, I'm getting 1%. I go to Cote d'Ivoire, I'm getting 6.6%. I go to Kenya, I'm getting 6.8%. I go to Ghana, I get 10.75%. Why will you not get oversubscription?
So that's good business.
Good business for them. And to the disadvantage of Ghana, what does it mean? Samson, what it means is that interest payment has now, I'm sure this year, interest payments will outstrip wages. So it will become the largest expenditure on public payroll, on public expenditure. When I say interest payment, it's not paying off the loan itself. The interest around it.
Yeah.
So money that should have gone to buy chalk for basic schools, money that should have been put in energy to give us reliable power, will now be used to pay interest on loans we have borrowed to consume. It's a wake-up call to us, and because we don't have time, I'll have just 2 suggestions for government.
2 suggestions in 1 minute.
Yeah, 2 suggestions in 1 minute. We are here because our expenditures are just far more than our income, and it has become a regular feature. And therefore, government strategy for dealing with this is to borrow to finance the difference. For how long is this going to happen? That every year, you're not able to generate enough money to finance your recurrent expenditure, so you have to go and borrow to finance it. We cannot go on like that. Government must do two things. Cut the waste. And this is not just politics. If you go to the Auditor General's report, the money that, for instance, for a particular year, you allocate to, say, Ministry of Agriculture, you say it's 100 million. The Auditor General completes the report, it says, oh, that money, a substantial portion of it went into unearned salaries and money that cannot be accounted for. We should cut that. Two, government must reform the public sector. Those agencies you said could be weaned off public sector payroll. Why are they still there? Governance laziness. We know the right things to do, and people are just sitting there thinking that we can just borrow to finance our recurrent expenditures. It just cannot happen. And what is happening now should tell us that investors are beginning to see that Ghana, we are not doing anything to finance our expenditures. We are just borrowing. And they are now saying that we'll either not lend to you, or if we lend to you, the price will be very high. Ghana should wake up.
Doc, we were running away from the Bretton Woods institutions, from handing us money and then all of that, with conditionalities that we said were harsh and were getting us poorer and poorer. So we went to this sort of borrowing, and we felt that was good. But now some say, in the manner in which we are beginning to, the appetite for this kind of Eurobond, flotation, we are borrowing back into slavery.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with that largely, but I think that the concept of borrowing is not sinful. Countries borrow for very good reasons. If you borrow for productive purposes, largely, you won't have this burden on you. But I think that we, as a lower middle income country, there's history to it also. Our access to concessionary loan is tapering off, largely. So there's a huge market out there that we can access capital to reduce the huge infrastructure deficit, which I would support. But we have to understand the mechanisms of the international capital market. Then we can understand why Ghana had to borrow at this rate, whilst others got it at less than 1%, or even within the African country. Because really, investors are not treating the whole African country as a homogeneous continent. A certain level of differentiation is being applied, which will reflect the differences in the political and economic fundamentals of each country that is going to the market to access capital. There is also a dynamics in here. The whole euphoria surrounding Eurobonds from African countries is also waning, is dissipating, because of how much in the last couple of years African countries have actually taken upon themselves, and whether they will be able to sustain that. That would also reflect the higher yield that investors will demand, particularly for Ghana. At the time that they embarked upon the roadshow, there were things that happened that didn't favor us. The rating agencies, their opinion or their reports were such that we were a junk country. Do you read your junk mails?
I don't.
Okay. That is how investors are going to treat any debt issue from a junk country. They only read if they get a call. So somebody might perhaps tell you, can you check your junk mail? Probably it's gone in there. So, but if you are an investment grade, the way you are treated is different. Okay, so because the market is not really a market for love, favor, emotions. No, it's a market driven by risk and the compensation that investors are demanding for. So if the perceived default risk is very high, it means that investors will hold out for higher compensation. Okay, but what is also interesting is that Ghana has never defaulted in terms of this Eurobond before or debt. We don't have that history, but Cote d'Ivoire has it somewhere 2011. But you see, but the difference is that it's not really the default now, but it's the fear of it.
You said Cote d'Ivoire had it?
Yeah, somewhere 2011.
No, Cote d'Ivoire recently.
No, default. I'm talking about default.
Default.
Okay, that could have gone against them. But really, it is not the actual default now. It's the fear of it that paralyzes investors, for which reason they are seeking greater protection from investing in Ghana government toward security. Going for the IMF facility in itself is some inherent admission that there are weaknesses in here, for which reason we need this cover, even though it actually helped. But another interpretation is some level of admission. We all do agree that we went through certain challenges. We went to the IMF for policy credibility, but I think that we are beginning to see some recovery, but it's still quite fragile to some extent.
But the rate at which we're able to sell it is a statement about our economy.
Sure.
Yes, certainly. It's a feedback, and I believe that is something that government will have
and
to
what would
take.
you say? What would you classify that feedback? Is it the use of the junk or what?
Certainly, it has something to do with where we belong in terms of the ranking or the rating.
Yeah. And your example is that we belong to the
yeah. In fact, I mean, essentially, if you look at where the coefficient they gave us and the interpretation, we are not really an investment grade country, and that is how investors will treat you.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. You finish in about 1 minute, and then we get quickly.
Then we also have to understand the global dynamics as the U.S. exit their unconventional monetary policy and all of that. But there's something interesting there. The huge variation in the secondary market that we saw, just at the time they were about ending the roadshow, may have more to do with a reflection of the weaknesses perhaps in the political and economic fundamentals. But all this are also happening within another global context, which does not favor us as well. So perhaps put all these things together, you realize that. But let me also say this. Even though it's a 15-year bond, actually the weighted average maturity of that debt is 14 years. Because we are having to pay part of it much earlier than the 15th year. It's just like going for a facility that you want to use over 15 years, and they are saying start bringing it back in year 13th. So you don't get to actually use it for all the 15 years. And that represents cost to Ghana government.
Interesting. Koku, look at the manner in which he seeks to do the classification, depending on how Fitch and others have put us. And yet we consistently hear the president and other managers of the economy use the words resilient, robust. Is that still, allowed?
Yeah, we are hugely challenged. But you can say we have some, the Ghanaian economy today is far, far different from what it used to be, with oil and gas having come on board. Let's be honest. We are a lower middle income economy. So this is an economy that is growing, but there are huge challenges out there. And that I think we shouldn't deny. But we don't have much time to go into details. There's something that just struck me, and perhaps our colleagues from Parliament may help in educating me. We were going for 1.5 billion, and we went for 1 billion, whilst we're out there. Parliament approved 1.5.
Up to 1.5.
No. As far as I read the Hansard, I see 1.5.
The finance minister's explanation is that it's up to 1.5.
I am reading. No. I'm going by the official record.
Okay.
It was 1.5 that was approved on July 23rd, 2015. July 22nd, 2015, they came with a motion for rescission of an earlier approval. That was 1 billion.
Yeah, right.
March 23rd. Now, when they came with that motion for rescission, they were saying that there had been an agreement between Ghana and the IMF for us to up it by 500 million. There were some few discussions in Parliament to the effect that, look, bring a separate resolution for 500 million. The government's position was that, no, if we did so, it will not go with the IMF principle of having one resolution. So they went for a motion of rescission. That is, they rescinded. I'm asking whether now that we've gone out there and taken a billion, meaning that a certain decision was taken to reduce the 1.5 by 500 million. I'm asking the parliamentarians to tell me if it's okay in terms of procedure.
In practice, when Parliament gives an approval, it's a ceiling.
Okay.
You are not allowed to spend more than that has been approved.
Thank you.
If for any reason
Thank you very much.
Spend
right.
you don't have the money or you can't spend up to that.
Thank you very much.
So they didn't need to come back to Parliament.
They need to inform Parliament about what has happened.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
But at least we haven't breached the ceiling of 1.5
Right. And
billion.
I think that's
my colleague
yeah.
ought to know that you know the World Bank partial risk guarantee of $400 million was also within the same period.
Okay, sorry, but we are out of time. Thank you very much for my guest, Abdul Malik Kukubako, who is editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide. Gary Nimakomafo, private legal practitioner, was here. Kweku Kwating is MP for Obuasi West and member of Parliament Finance Committee. Also, the Honorable Haruna Idrisu, Minister for Employment and Labour Relations and MP Tamale South. Also, Dr. Godfrey Bokwin is economist with the University of Ghana. My outfit, as always, is provided by Latida. You can call Latida 020-433-6444, 020-433-6444. Have a good afternoon.
Newsfile was brought to you